What is the flavor of flamenco? On today's menu. Stretching across the southernmost part of Spain, Andalusia is the land of gypsies and bullfighting and the birthplace of classic Spanish dishes like jamón ibérico, tapas, and gazpacho. Cooking with gypsies in Jerez.
One of the most amazing experiences of my life, and I know I will never forget it.
Spain's most prized jamón ibérico.
It is a bit of a miracle.
Reinventing gazpacho for the 21st century.
It's like an Andalusian Coca-Cola.
Seville plays an important role in the Western imagination of Spain. It's here that Carmen, for example, is set. It's also the setting for the Barber of Seville, of course. But Sevilla's most important moment came with the discovery of the Americas because all of the ships, the conquistadores, left from here. Columbus himself departed from Sevilla. So they went to the New World. They came back with gold and silver, which transformed the city, making it really ornate. You can see these beautiful churches covered in gold, but they treasure, which was the tomatoes and peppers and potatoes and corn. And that, from here, was disseminated throughout Europe, so it completely transformed the cuisine of Europe. I'm Lisa Avent, I'm a journalist, and we are standing in the center of Seville, which is the capital of Andalusia.
So much of what is quintessentially Spanish can be found in Andalusia. But the truth is, Spain's southernmost province is a melting pot of Gypsy, Muslim, and Christian cultures, all of which have left their mark on its food. In the southwestern town of Jerez, Andalusian gypsies, the custodians of flamenco, make a veritable stew of culture and cocina.
Manuel Valencia is a professional chef who is also ethnically Gypsy. He's written a book on Gypsy cooking in his hometown of Jerez, and he's probably the leading expert on what constitutes Gypsy food. Today, Manuel has organized something totally unusual we're very lucky to be a part of. We're invited into the home of the Junquera family. The Junqueras have a reputation for being fabulous flamenco musicians, both singing and dancing, but also are known for their cooking.
Acción, corte!
Two women, Bastiana and Salvadora, will be there to prepare some classic Gypsy dishes.
Viva una mesa gitana, que viva una mesa gitana, con su sajito, con su higuito, con su juguito, con su cebolla, con su hierbabuena, con su hierbabuena, ay su perejil, ay su perejil.
The first dish is a potaje or berza. It has several names. One of the characteristics of traditional Gypsy cooking is that it's often made with ingredients like chickpeas and wild cardoons and things that really don't cost very much, and you make something that is absolutely delicious from it. This stew contains chickpeas, habichuelas, a kind of small fava bean, some peppers, some pimentón, which is a Spanish paprika. In the stew, you can see these pieces that look like celery, but in fact, these are the stalks of wild cardoons.
Bailar y cantar. Bailar y ya está toda la comida guisada.
Both Bastiana and Salvador spontaneously burst into song. They're improvising about the foods they're preparing. So they're singing about, I'm chopping onions, or I'm stirring the stew. It's a really layered flavor. It's a bean stew, but you've got two kinds of beans, and so they form a nice contrast. The chickpeas are a little firmer. The habichuelas, or these small fava beans, are much more tender. And the overwhelming flavor, I would say, would be of the pimentón, which is a sweet kind of paprika. This dish is menudo, or tripe stew.
Y después tengo una cosa pendiente con tía Sarva ahora.
Manuel says he's been waiting for years to try Bastiana's menudo again because when he was a child, his mother used to send him over to her house where she would sell it. And he remembers it from then as being incredibly delicious and as her making the best menudo in all of Jerez.
Y tía Bastiana fue la última señora gitana que vendió el menudo para la calle.
There's so much talk about head-to-tail eating, but back then, eating organs, eating things that aren't the specialized meats that we tend to prefer today was economic necessity.
Decirme usted el azar.
So for Manuel, this was a chance to learn from women he had always admired.
Ahí está bien. Me parece, si no me equivoco, alguna cosa de
What really motivated him was his memory of his parents, of his grandparents, of people like Salvadora and Bastiana, who tell all of these stories about what life was like for them, where they would be out in the fields working 7 or 8 hours during the day, and then they'd come back and they'd end up sleeping in the same places where the animals were kept. So they had an incredibly difficult life. This dish is called salpicón.
Mientras que sale el gazpacho que conocemos.
Manuel thinks it might be one of the oldest forms of gazpacho. It comes from before there were tomatoes in Spain, before the discovery of the Americas. He's made it with another kind of cardoon, mixed with a paste made from garlic, bread, oil, and vinegar.
¿Cómo se llama?
Ole, ole, ole. Ole. Pasóme un pino verde y a ver si lo divisaba, y a ver si lo divisaba.
And then on top of that, they add just the slightest touch of orange peel.
Lo que divise fue el polvo del coce que lo llevaba el coce que lo llevaba. Venga, jaleo, jaleo, ¡ale! ¡Vamos! ¡Arza! ¡Desazón un pino verde! Sin canción ni nada, sin ensayar ni
Being in Spain, you constantly have an awareness of gypsy culture. Yes, anybody can go see flamenco performance, but to watch it spontaneously in their own house on a street that is famous for its gypsy community, to get the chance to watch them cook, to listen to their arguments over whether they should add cumin or not, that was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, and I know I will never forget it.
Well, jamón Iberico is a cured ham, but very different. It comes from the local breed of the southwestern part of Spain.
This is not a product that starts in a factory. This is unique in the world.
Sí. Eduardo is a local farmer who is committed to the traditional production of Iberico ham, starting with the pure Iberico pig.
This is the idea of having the local animal living in the local ecosystem for the food they need, and they grow slowly, healthy, and happy.
It's intended to live only in a very specific habitat, which is called the dehesa. The dehesa is the Mediterranean forest that has been transformed through centuries by men to give it a use in terms of the farming and the agriculture. So it sometimes looks wild, but it is not.
The Spanish cannot speak of jamón without waxing poetic. It inspires a depth of emotion barely understood by foreigners. In Jabugo, 120 miles north of Jerez, Eduardo Donato prepares this highly prized national obsession the way it's been made since the Roman Empire.
Now we are in Eduardo's farm. It's called Finca Maladua. It's about 100 hectares. That's about 100 soccer fields. You know, más o menos. The Iberico pig without the dehesa would not be able to produce the same quality at all. Eduardo's pigs are 100% pure Iberico, and he is very strict in following the traditional method.
Me han dejado casi sin voz, ya tanto.
He starts with the purest breed and gives its pigs all the space, all the dehesa they need to find enough food. The trees we find are mostly holm and cork oak trees. Both produce acorns. Just an example that we have here. It's a small cork oak tree of 1,000 years old. The cork is one of the resources of the desert, and it's taken every 9 years. So when we drink wine, we can remember this.
Just half of it, no? Less than half.
5 personas para abrazar el árbol.
The acorn season is called Montanera, which starts now from mid of October until January, February. The Iberico pig eats just acorns and grass.
Mira, una ya...
The pigs prefer the acorn from the holm oak tree because it's sweeter.
Nosotros sabemos ya, esta es dulce, aquella es dulce. Aquella
They
otra
don't just eat anything. They have an element of gourmet pigs. Eduardo is also recovering a line which was almost lost within the Iberico breed, which is the Manchado de Jabugo. These pigs are indigenous to this area. They have very much in common with the Iberico pigs in general, the long ears, the long snout they need to dig and find food. The legs are tall, that helps the pig to walk around the dehesa. In a way, it's like a four-wheel drive pig. Comenzar, los primeros jamones serán de estos.
Sí, sí, sí.
From this will come the first Iberico hams from this line.
Pero esto saldrá a la mesa 4 años.
Okay, so we have to be a bit patient to see the end result. At the end of the Montanera, well, that's the sad time for the pig and the happy time for consumers. The acorn season finishes right in the middle of winter. That allows the hams to be cured on a natural basis, taking advantage of the natural conditions of the winter. So basically, the hams are covered with sea salt for about 12-14 days. This is a very old technique. The Romans used it. It was the old way to preserve food when we had no technology. And after that, the hams are cleaned and moved to the upper rooms called secaderos, where they are hanged from the month of March until the end of summer to let them dry slowly. These are rooms surrounded with windows. People looking after the hams, they have to control how is the weather outside, if the windows need to be closed or need to be opened, to make sure that the process is slow and nice. And when autumn comes again, they are moved downstairs to what is called the bodegas. That's where the ham develops what's called the microflora, which is something that incorporates naturally to the hams in the secadero. That helps a lot to develop the final bouquet of the ham. One of the final tests to check if the curing of the ham is perfect is to use a bone that is introduced in the ham. It's called a cala. It must be an expert who checks just by the aroma of this cala if the curing is the optimum point. So the process reminds you more of wine than of meat. It is about touching, it is about smelling, it is about feeling. What he's doing now, he's opening the ham. He's taking the outer fat, which has oxidated. That fat tends to be yellowish. When you finish carving, you put it back on top of the surface. It's the best protection. It's natural packaging.
Sí.
But when you get to the white fat, that's where all the flavor is. See how he's carving flat, small, thin slices.
Grasa se hunde el dedo y después las infiltraciones.
One of the qualities of Iberico ham is how special its fat is. All animals, including humans, when we store fat, usually we do it on the side of the muscle. The idea of the infiltration is that this animal is able to store small lines of fat within the muscle. When we touch the fat, just with the temperature of our body, melts immediately. That is because of the really high content of oleic acid, which is a monounsaturated fatty acid, the same you find in olive oil. This for a meat product is quite incredible. It is a combination of elements. It is the breed, the genetics, it is the habitat, it is the natural food, it is the exercise, all combined that create this small miracle. Now for the tasting, no forks. This is to be touched. Go for it. First you feel how it melts in your mouth, how the flavor develops. Enhorabuena.
Ah, ya lo has probado y todo.
Perfecto. It's not salty at all. It is sweet, it's nutty. Well, I think Iberico ham is probably one of the best things in this world. I'm not just saying the best ham in the world. To me, it is a bit of a miracle that in the 21st century we have a ham like this. It's still being done in the old way. I mean, this is not ham, this is something else. Totally. Digo, esto no es jamón, es otro mundo.
Es caviar, lo que he dicho yo, esto es caviar.
Esto es caviar, this is caviar.
This is the Mediterranean Sea, 30 minutes from the Rock of Gibraltar. And sometimes when it's really clear, you can actually see the coast of Africa. There are two main things that make gazpacho gazpacho. It is a cold soup, perfect for summertime, and it has bread mixed in. It's like my mother's gazpacho. Yeah, the green pepper. I prefer gazpacho thick like this. This is classic gazpacho. This is Chef Dani García and his mother, Isabel.
Ponemos el ajo, un sabor de casa de toda la vida.
Isabel says gazpacho is like a member of the family.
Recuerdo de mi padre.
Gazpacho reminds her of her father, her husband. When she tries gazpacho, it's home.
Antiguo en un mortero, ¿eh?
Otro tipo de detalle.
Dani thinks his mother's gazpacho is amazing. You can actually drink it in a glass. With ice.
It's like an Andalusian Coca-Cola.
Yeah. My name is Nazaret. We are here in Marbella in Chef Dani García's Restaurante Calima. We're going to prepare two of the progressive gazpachos from his menu, green gazpacho and ajo blanco.
Originally a way to get extra mileage out of leftover bread, gazpacho is a cornerstone of the southern Spanish table, dating back to the Muslim rule of Andalusia. But in Marbella, 220 miles southeast of Jabugo, Chef Dani Garcia dares to put an avant-garde twist on this beloved Andalusian refreshment.
Exactamente dónde.
For Chef Dani García, gazpacho is the best creation. Here in the south of Spain, we need something to refresh ourselves from this heat, so gazpacho and Andalusia, they go hand in hand.
Gazpacho normally 3 different colors, red, green and white. Ajo blanco, this is the most traditional and the first gazpacho in Andalusia. The traditional ajo blanco is almond soup with white garlic. El ajo blanco es blanco, lógicamente, y se hace con ajo.
Dani says we have here a game of words. This plate is called ajo blanco, white garlic, but in this case it's black.
This special garlic, it's a Japanese garlic. Fermented and roasted. We open and then we put inside a caviar of arenque.
Herring. You fill it?
With herring caviar. El ajo blanco tradicionalmente.
Chef Dani García says in ajo blanco there are normally 2 distinct flavors. One of them is sweet, which comes from the ajo blanco itself and the almonds.
And the garlic.
And the garlic.
This is the almond puree garlic flour.
The other is usually acidic. Normally the acidic comes from the vinegar. But this dish is amazing because Dani, instead of acidic flavor, we got here a smoked one, which comes from the herring caviar. You can see the contrast of colors as well as the contrast of taste. Is this the Rock of Gibraltar?
Well, it could be. Why not? It's very different. Dulce, de regaliz, aromático.
It tastes like when you used to be a child and get licorice. Yeah, it's the same taste.
Esto es un gazpacho verde, green gazpacho. We take green tomatoes in a blender with avocado, green beans, olive oil, vinegar and salt. This is a very typical shrimp in this area, is quisquilla. The philosophy is the acid of the green tomato, the sweet, the green beans and la grasa que aporta la quisquilla.
The grease of the prawns.
You take the tomato and put in nitrogen. Sí, rubí, que es como...
Lipstick.
Not exactly, but similar. Yeah, but lipstick is edible because the girls who put lipstick is edible.
Edible.
This is hot, this is very cold. 1 second, you do the skin of the tomato. Okay.
It's Andalusia. It's Andalusia. The flavor is pipirana, it's called. It's tomato, onion, and green peppers. But more than the flavor, it's kind of the feeling, you know? The texture. Together, it's a proper salad. It's gorgeous. ¿Piensas que sus gazpachos son un poquito raros?
No, no. Son distintos, mejores que los míos.
No, de Toulouse.
He says gazpacho is very related to the history of Andalusia.
Norte de África, ¿no? Esa influencia.
From the Moorish influence in North Africa, there are loads of almonds. Ajo blanco came first. El ajo blanco es el gazpacho original. Then after that, tomatoes came from Mexico. Christopher Columbus brought the tomatoes for traditional gazpacho and green peppers for green gazpacho. In the moments you recognize the taste, you say, this is gazpacho, this is ajo blanco, this is my mother's gazpacho, you know. But it goes farther than that.
Lo popular como el gazpacho.
In some way, he's recovering those dishes and those plates, but in the technique, it's really modern. So in many ways, he's taking a dish from the past and he's pushing it into the future.
Ay, la Virgen va par molino, y el molino está cerrado. Ay, San José, cójate niño.
In Andalusia, still enjoy food with others, not only at home with the family, but also on the street. The social relationship is based around food. That gives to food a very important role in the life of Andalusia.